when we're in that rising state, we said yes to this uncertain thing, and we said yes to doing something that's completely different, where you are going to be that person in the room feeling the imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong. But here's the thing, you have to then own your gifts. This is where you start to cultivate, ooh, what am I actually good at? And you start to lean into that.
Without Fear of Her Future podcast is for women who are passionately pursuing financial freedom using multiple streams of income and real estate to accomplish their goals. We are here to empower you to be brave, dream big, and design a life that you love that inspires others to do the same. I'm your co-host, Andrea Engstrom, a real estate investor and business coach and co-founder of the Partnership for Realtors. And I'm here with my co-host, Tresa, founder of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and author of the book, Without Fear of Her Future. Over the past 2 years, Tresa has had nearly 200,000 join her masterclass where she teaches women how to become successful real estate investors. Hey, Tresa.
Hey, Andrea. Well, today we are talking to Dr. Neeta Bhushan, a mother, wife, entrepreneur, and performance coach. She has helped transition change makers, high achievers, and burned out professionals pivot into careers they love and create lives where they thrive. So, Dr. Neeta, welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me, ladies.
We are excited. Love everything that you are about, everything that you are doing. So tell us how did you get started as an entrepreneur and what inspired you to make the transition to helping others on their journey?
Oh, wow. Yes. I would have to say it had to be my very many sucky moments. And I had quite a few sucky moments, as I write in my latest book, That Suck Now What? How to Embrace the Joy and Chaos and Find Magic in the Mess. And I think that many times our greatest triumphs, our greatest next chapter lies in our biggest hurdles and our messes that we have and the chaos sometimes that we can't even see our way through. And I think for myself, I was actually at a point in my life where I thought everything was on the upswing, and I had a lucrative dental practice. I was a dentist, and I was not even 30, and I had a business of over 7 figures. Yet I was struggling, and I was struggling internally. I was struggling mentally. I didn't want people to see that what I had built on the outside wasn't really a reflection of what I was really feeling on the inside, and that I was hiding my reality. And my truth was, I was in a toxic relationship. I was in an abusive relationship. I was in such denial for a really long time until I was faced with this decision on December 31st, 2011, if I should stay or if I should go. And sometimes and for those watching and listening, if you've ever been faced with such a drastic, like, I have to stay or go, it all of a sudden encourages the deepest aspects of yourself to lean into bravery, to lean in your courage and say, you know what? My reality actually sucks right now, and I have to do something different. I have to do something different that's scary. I have to do something different that is uncertain, that I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but that place where I'm at right now is not safe, and I have to leave. And so that began a journey for the next 7 years where I would pretty much uproot everything in my life. And it would really cause me to go into some very deep healing and healing and reconciling a lot of the things that I hadn't really dealt with. And first and foremost, I hadn't dealt with the loss and the traumatic upbringing that I had, being a caretaker at 10 years old, losing 3 members of my family, my mom, my brother, and my dad, all before I was, 19 years old.
Wow.
and to be on this trajectory of, okay, the only thing that I know was what my immigrant parents used to tell me when I was a kid was study hard, study hard, study hard, and get straight A's and be a doctor. Well, I became a dentist, so I don't know. But man, was it a lot of pressure. And man, I didn't necessarily realize all of that upheaval would come out when I started to take the chances and the risks in myself, which then led to selling my dental practice a couple years later, focusing on my own building of my leadership, investing in other female-led entrepreneurs, saying yes to new opportunities, which also meant real estate investing, and just saying yes to even new communities, because I had to rebuild not only a family that I had lost twice, with obviously that first marriage, but also this identity of, am I actually just only a dentist, or who am I now? And rediscovering that aspect of myself led to working with tons of women to do the exact same thing and leave what no longer served in their life after their sucky moment, so that they can say, all right, that sucked. Not this sucks right now, but they can actually use it in a past tense to say then, now what? Now what? What am I going to do? What am I going to do now that I don't have any fear, because I've already lived through that fear and got on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. So you transitioned from being an entrepreneur in a business that you grew to, you fell out of love with, if we can say that, but then started helping other people discover what really lights them up. How did you transition to helping people? What got you started as a coach or as a consultant in that space?
Yeah, I think, many times, again, our next chapter is birthed because of some of these sucky moments. And while I was saying yes to new opportunities, in my book, there's, part 2 of my book, when we've gone through the suck moments in part 1, part 2 is about building our resiliency. What does that actually look like? And how do you actually create a framework and a foundation for yourself so that you can take risks, you can do other things? People always ask, how the heck did you go from dentistry to investing and
right.
then coach and speaking on stages? Like, wait, and an author, how did that even work out? Well, it's one of the key frameworks that I talk about in the book. And the first part of that is, making peace, number 1, with your upbringing. But number 2, and for me, that was going into the healing, hiring people to help me process some of the grief and the things that I was so ashamed of. When you go through loss, when you go through a heartbreak, when you go through divorce, we think we can just take it on all our own. But I think there's definitely key, and this is probably what you guys do as well, is to have a foundation and community to support you into that next level. I had to do that for myself on a mental, emotional level. And then, so that's part 1 is making peace with that upbringing. How was I making those decisions? What caused me to even attract those kinds of partners? And then even in my own leadership, get leadership coaching so that I can actually get more time in for myself, watch my business grow, but also focus on that part of myself that I neglected. So part 2 of this is saying yes to doing things that scare you. And what I mean by that is, look at your current environment. For me, at that time of my life, all I knew was dentistry. All I breathed was dentistry. All I hung out with were dentists and doctors. I didn't know anything outside of that reality. But what I did know was, I don't want to be in this reality. This reminds me too much of that pain. And this reminds me too much of, like, I need to be around other people. And I feel like so many of us, when we know intuitively, call it our guides, call it God, call it whatever you want to take in, but you know that you need other people, and you just can't quite pinpoint, is it a new community? Maybe it's a new hobby. Maybe it's just saying yes to different things, but they start to come up. So I would get invitations to go to a book club. I would get invitations to go to a healing retreat, a meditation retreat, a yoga retreat, a networking event, another networking event. I said yes. And I said literally 6 months of yes to so many different opportunities because I wanted to recreate a community that I had lost in that divorce. And also, when we are doing that, science says, and I have a whole list of this in my part 2 of the book, we are recreating new neural pathways in our brain, and we're inviting more of that creativity. We're inviting more of that curiosity to say, ooh, I was deathly afraid of public speaking, to the point where instead of telling the doctors and my team what I'd need, I would only use like the messaging system, in kind of our computer software, because I didn't want to be face to face with them. For the longest time, I just beat myself so much around that. And I thought, okay, a friend said, hey, this would get you out of your shell. Why don't you do improv? And I'm like, improv? What's that? You have to be funny to do that? There's no way. I am not funny. And guess what? 6 weeks of that, I was living in Chicago. So for those of you who know, Second City, it's kind of like, I don't know, the Harvard of like trying to be on Saturday Night Live. Well, that was clearly not me. But I went to say, all right, well, this is where I'm at. And it was the thing that not only got me out of my shell, it got me to love speaking in a way where it wasn't always in my head and I had to perform and I had to like perfect things. I could just be from the heart and it would be accepted. And I'm like, this is amazing. So then what else did I do? I said yes to stand-up comedy. I never in a million years thought I could even create a joke. I thought I would like suck terribly, and I did. But it gave rise to a different aspect of me, and it built confidence in a way that I hadn't even known, which then led me to saying yes to investing in these female entrepreneurs, simply because I started that process of inviting new opportunities, which then led me to angel investing, and then led me to thinking, hey, if I can actually run my business, and I'm now only there twice a week at this point, and I'm also starting a nonprofit that's championing confidence in women and girls. Well, let me go to the key players who know how to do this right, which is Silicon Valley, which is Stanford, their nonprofit management program. I'm like, I want to learn how people solve this issue. Well, every single person who was teaching at that weekend, they were all from the business school. And what were they doing? They were all talking about VCs, venture capitalists, and their investments and how they did things. And honestly, for me, I was the smallest fish in the room. I realized very fast that I'm like, I don't think I can run this nonprofit, but I'm really curious at how these people advise startup founders. And they were really curious because they're like, how the heck did you just live through all of this loss and all of this heartache, and you are still living to tell us all about your dental practice? And they're like, we need to learn from you. And so it was just saying yes to all these things. And lo and behold, I started being an angel investor. And then I wanted to get into more advising people because it was the same. People want to make 7 figures in their dental and their chiropractic and all of those professional businesses. And some actually want to, raise capital for the ideas that aren't even made yet. It required a certain level of what I call emotional grit. And that third part of the framework in part 3 is your emotional capacity to feel the fear, to feel the bravery, to do things, but know exactly, well, what part of it is my ego that's stopping me? And what part of it is actually me thinking that I'm like 5 years old and my dad said, no, I can't do it because he never believed in me. And I'm still carrying that belief system in my mind. And that was the key difference. And when I leaned into that, I knew that, oh, wait, everything in my background had clicked. I was meant to be teaching mental health, emotional health. And I came up with the first framework and my first really sharing this on different stages, whether it was Google at their headquarters to, places around the world like Malaysia, like India. And that's where it really jump started. And for me, just saying yes and being okay with being the smallest fish in the room. Sometimes you learn so much because you're sharing your vulnerability. And I think many times we think we have to know it all in the room. And no, there's so much grace in that, which then led me to helping others find their mess, their magic in their mess.
Mm-hmm. I love this.
Oh, I do too. So powerful.
So, Dr. Neeta, you mentioned in your story that you showed up to this room of people and you looked around and you're like, I don't belong here. And I think so many women show up to what they hope is their next thing, and they experience what we call imposter syndrome, right? Where we're like, do I really deserve this? Is this really for me? I don't belong here. So as you're creating the next level of success, like, how do you overcome those kinds of feelings?
Oh, I love that question. I love it so much. So it gets into when we are, and this is part 3 of the book that I just wrote, That Sucked, Now What? When we're in the now what stage, when we have had some sort of a fall, and this is how we actually fly forward past our own insecurities, past our own imposter, past our own past that, we're kind of in this uncertain time in our life. We have to recognize first that there's a fall, and the fall could be maybe a breakup, maybe a heartbreak, loss of a job, something that tells you inside that you're like, I know that there's something else more for me out there. I just don't know what the next steps are. But the next steps are probably in an email or having you join one of the communities. And maybe you're kind of like on the fence. Well, that's step 2. First, you recognize there's a fall. I have to make a decision on something. Then we get into this ignition phase. And the ignition is like, all right, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? Am I going to stay? Am I going to go? Am I going to stay in that same reality that I've been in, that's all I know? Because for me, I had to carve out a new reality. It wasn't going to be everything I learned in dental school. It wasn't even going to be anybody that I hung out with, because all they were talking about was millimeters and fillings and all the things. I love my dental community. I love them so much. And there was time for me to go. And I think we can cherish and appreciate our life experiences. That gave me so much of the tools in my own leadership to now, forge a path forward. But when we're in that rising stage, this is what I want everybody to take hold of, is when we're in that rising stage, when we said yes to this uncertain thing, and we said yes to doing something that's completely different, where you are going to be that person in the room feeling the imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong. Like, I've had many, many times where these VCs who've invested in, I don't know, millions and millions and millions of things. And I'm like, hi, I don't even have a business degree. I can only speak on what I can speak about. But here's the thing, you have to then own your gifts. This is where you start to cultivate, what am I actually good at? And you start to lean into that. And that's rising. In that rising stage, you are skeptical. You might be reserved, but you're also curious. Those feelings, emotions can exist all at the same time. That's a good thing. That's a good sign of like, I'm onto something, because you haven't mastered it yet, because you're not the master of it. Yeah, it's going to suck a little bit because you don't know everything, and you're not supposed to, because you're still kind of on this new path. It's like a toddler that's like starting to just walk. I have 2 of them at home. And when they get the cadence well, then they start to run, and then they'll still fall and they might cry. But guess what? They're going to get back up and they're going to run again because it feels really good. So it's that same thing, allowing yourself to make the mistakes, allowing yourself to not know everything and embrace that, because that is humanity, and that's just part of us becoming better and better every day, right? And when we're rising, we're also cultivating the sense of our own confidence where we are at, where we are not judging ourselves. That's the other thing. With that imposter syndrome, we tend to judge every single thing. Did I do that right? Did I do that? Oh man, I screwed that up again. No, it comes without judgment. It just comes with, all right, I'm going to do this and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give myself grace because I'm building this new reality, and this new reality, this new muscle takes time. And then we get into magnifying stage. That's stage 4. Magnifying is like, all right, I kind of know what I know, and I accept my reality that I'm a beginner, but I kind of like it. I'm good where I'm at. And I am taking all of the support. And I'm saying yes to all of these new nuggets that I find because I'm going to keep it in my back pocket. The imposter still comes up because that's human, and we have to make peace with that and know that, all right, at every level that we are entering a new version of ourselves, that imposter is going to be there. But if she's not there, then that means we don't care about this thing enough. So that's a good thing. And then we get into thriving, and thriving means you want everybody to know what you're into. Like, you join this community and you're like, I want everyone to know that that can be her future. That can be the next thing for you. And you want to spread it like wildfire. You don't even care about your story anymore or the things that held you back. You're like, I want everyone to win, and let's all do this together. And I think that's really a cornerstone of the work that you ladies have done together with this organization, because it's not even about you anymore. It's about how many women collectively can grow. But that still means we're still going to have falls. We're still going to have things that maybe not go our way. We still might have a bad deal that may not go in the direction that we wanted it to, but that doesn't mean all the deals are bad. That just means, hey, that was one. All right, let's keep going. Let's rise up again. That sucked. Now what?
I love it. This is so powerful. And what an inspiring story of everything that you've overcome from your parents and then going through a divorce and having to make that decision. I recently had to just make a very difficult decision like that. And I just know, and you're so concerned about how it's going to affect other people and what they're going to think. But then you get to that point that I'm loving you here talking about, where you're just thriving. And then none of that stuff even matters, because once you have learned how to thrive, you just want everybody else around you to thrive as well. I absolutely love it. I love it. So can you share with us, as a coach, what is a transformation story where you help someone else find their brave and pivot into a life where they thrive?
Oh, yeah. So one of the stories that I share in the book, we'll just call her Lisa for the sake of right now. So Lisa was a stay-at-home mom, and she basically found one of my courses online. It's called Elevate Your Life. And she was curious about how she could elevate her life. And she was stuck in the same kind of monotonous momming for a very long time. And she had lost her juice. Yet she would, basically have conversations with a lot of the other women in her neighborhood. And lo and behold, one thing led to another. And she was like, hey, why don't I host these gatherings at my home? And I'm like, I'm so good at looking at people's resumes. And because she wanted to get inspired again. And so she loved it when other people were talking about their dreams and she didn't even realize. And so she had a knack for figuring out how to help somebody else stand out. Well, she came to me because she's like, I'm doing it for all these people, but how could I even turn that into something that I love? Like, I want to get out there. I want to go back in the corporate world. And so I said to her, I said, do you really think you want to go back in the corporate world, or what is it that you actually enjoy? Because sometimes we think the only way to make it is to go back into a reality that was our reality maybe a decade ago or 15 years ago or whatever that was. But maybe it can look so different in this new light if we actually allow it. Most of us don't know what that is, so we fall back on the things that we did know way back when. And so when I started telling Lisa, okay, well, what are all of these women that you're talking to, what do they all have in common? Well, they all loved the fact that she was so charismatic, that she took the time to actually look at their resumes to see and how to actually beef it up even more and make it stand out. So essentially, she was career coaching them without even career coaching them.
Yeah.
And so once we did this work together where she could actually elevate this part of her life in her own career and create the magic sauce of what she was starting to build for these women, she started to create these weekend workshops. And actually, in these weekend workshops, she helped people get new positions. And not bad for somebody who was a stay-at-home mom who now had this invigorated aspect of her life and who was actually just saying yes to her superpower, which was finding the magic in their mess. A lot of times when we're so in it, we can't see our own superpower. So I had to remind her of what her superpower was. So now Lisa has become a career coach and she is thriving.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell me about how you specifically help someone find the magic in their mess. Because when you're in your mess, it's really hard to be able to think that way. And I love that you have frameworks. But what's that part that allows people to like look at their story differently?
Oh, yes. So in part one of, the book That Sucked Now What, there's this, I call it the magical moment that sucked. And many times, most people are kind of like, how did that breakup? How was that magical for you? How was losing your mom magical for you?
Right.
And I think that, it's not to bypass any of these heavy and big emotions, because in the beginning, yes, it's going to suck. In the beginning, it is going to be messy. It is going to be chaotic. And all of those, I talk about a grieving period of even, you applying to something. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was the thing that you worked so hard on. You thought you were going to get that promotion and it never happened. It went to somebody else. You weren't selected. Those things suck. And we want to take the time to actually go through it. Now, when you actually get the book, That Sucked Now What, from thatsuckednowwhat.com, it actually comes with a 44-page guidebook. And the reason why I was so adamant about putting all of these lessons and tools and prompts in this guidebook, and it comes for free, by the way, and you can do this, you guys can do this as a little community together and even just as a self-reflective tool. And the reason why I did that is because there's so many things that we process or we don't even process because life is so go, go, go. And we think we're in the mess of it. And we're like, all right, I'm just going to talk it over with a girlfriend. And maybe talking it over with a girlfriend helps momentarily. Mm-hmm. But essentially, we've got to actually do that deep dive on our own. And if we don't know where to start, well, maybe we can have and create an inventory. And this is one of my favorite exercises in that guidebook. Create an inventory, maybe make a list of all of the instances that didn't go right. Maybe it was a breakup that you had in high school or your college sweetheart or whatever it was, the thing that you worked on, that dance competition that you didn't win the trophy on, or the piano thing that was like you were last place. What didn't work? What went wrong? What were some of those failures? What were some of those messes? Okay. And what did it lead to? What did it lead to? And I think that many times when we have so much of it in our head that we start to ruminate, we start to make meaning of things that didn't go well in our minds. But when we actually write it down, like, I didn't think that at that time of me selling my practice that I was going to build this next lifestyle, freedom focused enterprise that would take me all around the world, speaking in different places, connecting with people like you two, writing books. I had no idea. I knew that I had a book in me to write. I didn't know I was going to be writing for. And I think it all comes down to, well, that failure of me not getting into, I wanted to be an orthodontist way back when. I failed both of those tests. Well, at that moment, it sucked big time. And then when I actually applied to 10 of those schools and didn't get accepted, it sucked big time. But what did it allow me to do? It allowed me to purchase a practice on my own right out of dental school, maybe a couple years after, but early on in my career. And it allowed me to create a cosmetic practice on my terms where I could help with their facial aesthetics. And early on in Illinois, I was one of the few dentists that were doing, Botox and fillers and things like that, fun stuff. And we would have like little female parties but those failures led to me creating that reality for myself. Was it messy in the beginning? Yeah, it sucked. But looking back, so this inventory list is so great, especially if you are in a messy time right now where you're like, yeah, I know. It probably worked for you. It wouldn't work for me. I guarantee you, set aside 10 minutes today, and maybe the thickness of the suck that you're in right now, don't use that example, but use the ones that you grew up with and see where did that little breadcrumb lead you. I guarantee maybe that last breakup led you to the person you're dating now, or the life and the freedom that you're living now. Something happened, and that's the magic that I want us to find in our sucky moments.
Wow. So good. So good. Well, that sucks. What now? Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So all of our listeners need to get the book. Tell us again where we can find it, Dr. Neeta.
Yeah, so you can find it at Amazon or anywhere books are sold. But if you want to get the actual 44-page guidebook, it goes really deep into a lot of the things we talked about, a lot of exercises. It comes for free with the book. You go to thatsuckednowwhat.com.
Okay. I love it.
Beautiful.
I love it. Well, you have a lot going on. I want to know, what are you most excited about working on next? Sounds like a few more books are in your future, but what else else?
Well, you know what? I've been loving the momentum that this book has been having. We've had so many different organizations reach out, and I think that there's a lot of people who want to know and have permission to be able to suck at something new. And whether it's investing, whether it's saying yes to something that they're not necessarily good at, I think that phrase alone, it's already creating a lot of momentum and creating a global movement around giving permission to people to suck and to be brave, that it's not going to be perfect. I lived my life in perfection as a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser. And so I'm just so adamant about creating this, giving others permission for this book. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Beautiful. Neeta, we're really passionate about daily habits on this show. I want to hear about your daily habits. What are the things that you do on a regular basis that you believe contribute to your personal success and to your mental health?
Oh, yes. Oh, I have so many of these in the book, by the way.
Great.
And I'll give a couple of tips for you, because I think that, for especially in my stage of life, with two small kids, I've got a 19-month-old and a 4-year-old. They take up a lot of my time, especially in the mornings, right? So my big habit that I love and that I think that takes me through just to start of the day, and this is great because I can do it with my kids, but just putting on 3 songs. And those 3 songs maybe is 7 minutes. If you think 3.5 minutes per song or 2.5 minutes per song. It's between 7 to 8 minutes, but I am just allowing myself to dance, to move, to, to get the wiggles out if I've got a kid that's got a meltdown in the morning. But that has been such a deep practice for me, especially having toddlers that are wiggly. And that's really great. But the other thing that I think has really contributed to most of the goals that I've been able to achieve, ever since my divorce 11 years ago, is baking time for your POC. And what I call your POC, and I call this also in the book, but I'll give it to you here as well. And I go deeper on it on the book, in That Suck Now What. But your POC is your personal observation check-in. So whether it is that you're doing it once a week, once a month, maybe daily, but this allows you to then start writing out, all right, what is it that I'm desiring right now? Okay. What is it that, who is that person that I need to be? If I'm desiring more wealth, if I'm desiring more freedom, if I'm desiring more abundance, then who do I need to be for that? Well, I need to be more open-minded. I need to be I need to feel vulnerable. I need to be honest with myself on what I can take on and what I can say no to. So it's such a great reminder. And you can actually put all of your desires in that POC, because guess what? Maybe every week that might change. Maybe, every month that might change. Maybe every quarter it might change. But over the course of time, every time I would do this, I would do a deep dive once a month. And then I would do, just recollect, because it's great to see how far you've come. But I would have my own process of going back through and seeing, oh, which of those things am I really, really still excited about? And how is that contributing to my character? Because again, what we water in our lives grows. Right? And if we're watering our relationships, great, they're going to grow. If we're watering our career or our investment portfolio, that's going to grow. If we're neglecting our marriage, our relationship, or our single livelihood at home, well, guess what? That's not going to grow. So allowing ourselves to water what we would like to grow. And I think this POC is a great check-in mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and a beautiful tool to create those habits. And most importantly, not exactly what we want, but who we are becoming and who we need to be in the process. Because if we want to focus on wealth or abundance or freedom, then maybe we need to stop maybe complaining, or we need to stop, saying why I can't do something, or live in that fear scarcity mindset, and take a different approach, right? And so that's just one example of so many that I have in the book for you all.
Beautiful. So Dr. Neeta, we always like to ask our guests for 3 takeaways. And I love that you have frameworks and exercises. There's so many strategic and tactical things that you're giving our listeners here today. So tell us, what are 3 things that you would advise an entrepreneur who is looking to be brave and grow, or is perhaps feeling stuck where they are?
Yes. So the first thing is, we talked about so many things today, but the first thing is to pay attention to what are those feelings that are coming up, because I can give you something to do. I can give you so many of these tools, and I can tell you to do X, Y, and Z, but how do you want to feel? And I want you to check in with yourself, because if you're saying, okay, I'm feeling so stuck right now, but how would you like to feel? Would you like to feel more liberated? Would you like to feel more joyous in your life? Well, what are one of those 2 things that you want to invite? Maybe you want to say yes to going out with your girlfriends, or just saying yes to even buying the book, or joining a community that supports you. Make that one decision. That's the first step. The second step is, doing that inventory in your life. And that's the beautiful thing, because many times it's so easy for us to judge our circumstance right now, but it's harder to say, okay, how how did I play a role here? And how are the decisions, or were the decisions in my past, how did it lead me to here? Because that is huge. If we can reconcile and make peace with that, that's big. And the third thing is we don't have to do everything on our to-do list. Let's just have compassion for ourselves through the time, through the sucky moment. Because I think that, the very masculine way of doing things is like, let's just bulldoze through it and go through it. I think there's a beauty in, us as being women, that we can embrace the joy and the chaos. We can invite all of those feelings and also allow ourselves to do what we can, but to have grace and compassion for ourselves, that, every day is that new day to fly forward.
Yes. Wow. Well, every week we challenge our listeners to, in some kind of a way. So this week we want to make our own "That Sucked, Now What" motivational diary. So whether on paper or digitally, we are challenging you to take Neeta's philosophy to create a resource so that you can get yourself through the tougher times. It's obviously worked for her. So, every time that we go through an experience where we feel like life is being sucked from us, or maybe things don't go as planned, let's jot them down in that diary and then utilize Neeta's 4-step framework to bounce back. So once you visually see that you can overcome any obstacle that you're given, we become unstoppable. So let's all remember what Neeta says: stay where you are and don't move forward, or step into the rising stage, saying yes to a new reality.
Dr. Neeta, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I want to make sure our listeners can connect with you. What is the best way to connect with you, and where can they find your book?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Come and say hi on Instagram, and go ahead and grab a copy for your girlfriend as well. At thatsuckednowwhat.com.
Beautiful. Well, if you've not already subscribed to our podcast, be sure to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, get the word out about Dr. Neeta's new book, That Sucked, Now What, that's coming out. Buy it for a friend. We love this. And be sure to leave us a review. It helps us know if we're making an impact.
Yes. And if you know that you're ready to create financial freedom and build generational wealth, then check out the Without Fear of Her Future Masterclass, available at the link in the description of this video.
Well, Dr. Neeta, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Oh my gosh. Andrea, Tresa, the whole community. Wow. Amazing. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yes. On behalf of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and Tresa Todd, I'm Andrea Engstrom, encouraging you to be brave and dream big.